changing leadership.
Making progress toward a good agreement.
Good morning, America. I'm Joan London.
And I'm Charles Gibson. It's Thursday, November 5th. Whenever a new president is elected, we get this crash course on how democracy works. Seems to begin right away. And right now, the outgoing president, the president-elect, are organizing transition teams to make sure the government works smoothly, even as it changes hands. So this morning, we'll have with us a couple of pros from the Carter and Reagan administrations to offer the do's and don'ts. And later in this hour, we're going to focus on the bigger picture of the presidential torch being passed to the first administration born in the baby boom. And we now make a transition to weather.
Your baby booming weatherman. Okay, Charlie, the coldest air of the season so far has pushed into the deep south this morning, producing widespread frost as far south as Texas and Louisiana. And even with bright sunshine this afternoon, today's highs will remain chilly in this region.
All right. Also ahead, we keep hearing that it was the economy that finally did President Bush in. So now the voters will get a new president. And the question remains, how will he change the economy and your way of life? Our money editor, Tyler Matheson, will supply some answers. Leading the news, though, at this hour, the next step for the president-elect. Mike Schneider has that story of the news of the day. Mike, good morning.
Good morning, Joan. Good morning, everybody. Isn't it always this way? You get a new job, and suddenly there's a big stack of messages on your desk. People want you to call them back. That's the case with Bill Clinton this morning. Most of the messages are from foreign leaders who couldn't get a hold of him yesterday to congratulate him. Maybe Clinton couldn't talk because he was catching up on his sleep, or maybe it was because he was in a meeting to plan his move into the White House. Or maybe it was because Bill Clinton was talking to Ted Koppel about the first goals of his new administration.
I am going to focus like a laser beam on this economy. And foreign policy will come into play in part as it affects the economy. Healthcare comes into play in large measure as it affects the economy, as well as the lives of millions of Americans. But we've got to keep that focus because so many of our social problems have been aggravated by economic difficulties. There's more child abuse and neglect than there would be if we had a healthier economy. There's more family breakup. There's more crime. And I'm not blaming child abuse, family breakup, and crime on the economy, but the economy makes those things worse. And we have got to focus on the things that we can have an impact on early on and then reach out and radiate to these other things we want to bring in.
One other thing that Clinton told Ted Koppel, that a meeting he had yesterday with members of his transition team was mind-boggling. That's his word, because of all the work that has to be done before he actually moves into the White House. But President Bush is promising to help in the transition to make it easier for Bill Clinton. Mr. Bush made that promise during a big welcome home ceremony at the White House. And we get more on that now from ABC's Ann Compton.
President Bush found that defeat is not necessarily a lonely ordeal. When he got back to the White House, the South Lawn was a sea full of friendly faces.
Maybe you didn't read the election returns. It didn't work out quite the way we wanted.
The president was full of hope that history will be kinder than the voters in 1992.
I can think of nothing other to say than let's finish this job with style. Let's get the job done, cooperate fully with the new administration. It's been a wonderful 4 years, and nobody can take that away from any of us. It's been good and strong, and I think we've really contributed something to the country, and maybe history will record it that way. Thank you all very, very much.
There was no word on whether President Bush made any effort when he got inside to watch President-elect Clinton's appearance a few minutes later, declaring that foreign policy is still firmly in the incumbent president's hands.
The greatest gesture of goodwill any nation can make toward me is to continue their full cooperation during this period with our one president, George Bush, and that the greatest mistake any adversary could make would be to doubt America's resolve during this period of transition.
Of course, domestic policy for now is also legally in President Bush's hands, and he showed that yesterday. His first official act after losing the presidency was to veto the urban aid tax bill. He called it a violation of fiscal discipline. Next move is up to President-elect Clinton. Mike?
And we're still hearing an awful lot of criticism and seeing finger-pointing going on about the campaign itself, though. Mr. Quayle called the campaign bad a couple of days ago. Former President Reagan had some very harsh words for the way Mr. Bush's re-election campaign was run. What about Mr. Bush? What is he saying? And who ultimately is to blame here?
What he feels in his heart and expresses to his closest friends, I really can't tell you. Publicly, he has been supportive of the campaign team, which really ran a campaign exactly the way he wanted it done. He called the game plan for this. There is always a lot of finger pointing, especially when the loser saw the loss coming, I think, for some weeks leading up to this. But the president, for now at least, seems almost relieved to go ahead and get over this hump onto the governance for the last, 11 weeks of his administration, and quite willing to let Governor Clinton have a whack at the problems that plagued George Bush for the last 3 years.
Okay, Ann, thanks very much. ABC's Ann Compton live at the White House this morning. Now, all around the world, the reaction to Bill Clinton's election depends partly on what people thought about George Bush. Those who saw President Bush as a friend are sorry to see him go. Those who did not like his policies are hoping for something different in 1993. That is the way it is in Israel, where Palestinians and Israelis rarely see anything eye to eye. More on that now from ABC's Dean Reynolds in Tel Aviv.
Palestinians greeted the news of Bill Clinton's election with concern because of his pro-Israel stance in the campaign.
I hope he's going to have some time to reassess his more superficial positions that he took maybe in order to get elected.
The Palestinians and the other Arab nations in peace talks with Israel will miss what they saw as an even-handed Bush administration approach to the negotiations.
82% of the Jewish American elected him. So he should be on their side or not on our side.
Alone in the Arab world were Saddam Hussein and the Iraqi people, who were more than happy to see Bush lose. And on that point, at least, they found many allies in Israel.
I am very happy to see the man packing his bags and leaving Washington, D.C. on January 20th, 1993.
Prime Minister Rabin was more diplomatic, concentrating on the future and reportedly planning to meet the president-elect even before Inauguration Day.
We believe that he will lead the United States to whatever goals that the American people want.
Maybe the happiest Israeli this week is former Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir, whose aides often accused the Bush White House of anti-Semitism. Last night, Shamir told a national TV audience Bush was obsessed with ending the Israeli occupation and had a hand in his own defeat last June. No need to have pity on Bush, said Shamir. Dean Reynolds, ABC News, Tel Aviv.
And finally, a program note. Tonight on Prime Time with Diane Sawyer and Sam Donaldson, Magic Johnson talks about his stunning decision not to come back to basketball after all. That's tonight on Prime Time on ABC at 10 o'clock Eastern Time. That's it for now. Time to check in with Joan and Spencer.
All right, Mike, thank you very much. 7 minutes after 7, it is time for those weather maps. What you got, Spence?
Well, we've got some cold weather pushing into the side. I know you hate to hear that, don't you?
But it is that time of year. So.
It is that time of year, so get out the heavy clothes, as we've done today, and let's go to the maps. We'll show you what today is high. Not very high at all, in fact. Today is high.
Democracy is the peaceful transfer of power from one administration to another. And as early as today, President-elect Clinton may announce who will head his transition team. As press secretary during the Carter administration, Jody Powell has watched the process, both coming and going. Sheila Tate was press secretary for the transition team that President Bush assembled 4 years ago. Powell and Tate are now partners in a public relations firm and join us this morning from Washington. Good morning to you. Good to see you. Good morning. Jody, let me start with you and let me ask you, is it smooth with the comings in, working with the goings out, literally working together, or is it two groups apart?
It certainly was smooth between the Carter and Ford administrations, and then again between Carter and Reagan. I think it's likely to be so this time. It's ironic, I suppose, but Jim Baker, who certainly had a major role in the transition from Ford to Carter, will also have one here from Bush to Clinton. And I must say, for the Ford people, they could not have been more decent and helpful. I think we reciprocated with the Reagan people, and I'd be very surprised if that's not the case this year.
But Sheila, tell me how it works in practical terms. I mean, are there literally the new Secretary of X sitting with the old Secretary of X? And I mean, do they actually spend time together, or do they simply operate as separate entities until January 20th when you sort of hand it off?
Well, I think it's a little of both. I think the Reagan-Bush transition was a little peculiar in that it was the same party transition, and the difficult problem in that transition was having to tell your friends who were still in the Reagan administration that they couldn't keep their jobs.
Do Does President Bush make major decisions, Sheila, by himself for the next 11 weeks? Does he consult with the new president, or basically is it government on hold?
Well, he certainly has the constitutional power to make any decision, you know, until January 20th at noon. Right. How he chooses to make those decisions is entirely up to him.
Jody, you pointed to the smoothness of the transitions, but what are the pitfalls?
Well, most of the pitfalls, as you might expect, address themselves to the incoming administration, because if there are mistakes, they will have to live with them for the next for the next 4 years. I mean, you could run a list of 50 different things to consider: setting some clear priorities, making sure that you take your time in getting people in place, because those thousands of appointments that the president, at least ostensibly, makes will determine the character and the direction of that administration more than any other single thing that he does. It is an immensely complex situation. And your question to Sheila, on the one hand, the president has the constitutional authority to make decisions. On the other hand, if this is a decision which will require follow-through and implementation, which almost any important decision will, then he's got to make sure that there's some continuity there, so you have a constitutional situation on the one hand and a practical situation on the other.
Everybody concentrates, Jody, on people. Is it better to worry about policy as the incoming president, or do you worry about personnel first?
You certainly in those major areas need to make sure you have a sense of what direction you'll be headed, because you need, to the extent possible, to put people in place in those areas who share, at least to some degree, the president's inclination. If you don't, you will find yourself bumping up against problems and not that you never knew were there. Frankly, you will see in a few weeks the first story that says the Clinton administration is moving too slowly and making appointments to key positions. Unless he sees a lot of those stories, he is clearly moving too fast in making those appointments.
Probably it's already said in type. I have, Sheila Tate, here in front of me what they call the Plum Book. I'm not quite sure how many jobs are involved in it, but I suspect, just thumbing through it,
Charlie, I heard it was 8,600 jobs.
8,000 jobs to be filled by the new administration coming in. Tell me what kind of a madhouse begins. You told me about the problems of telling Reagan people they couldn't hold their jobs, but you've got people looking to come in, you've got people who are going out and looking for jobs. Right. What kind of a madhouse exists in Washington?
It clearly will become a madhouse, and that, you know, Jody was talking about how you balance the policy and the people issue. The people side is crushing. The pent-up demand, I think, from 12 years of being on the outs will create enormous pressure on Bill Clinton to appoint Democrats up and down the line, particularly people who worked for him, and that's going to involve a great deal of his time, I would think. I had people breaking through security at the transition just to get their resumes on your desk. I even had, I have to tell you, Charlie, you and I did an interview 4 years ago when I was working in the Bush transition, and I left here and the ABC driver gave me his resume.
He's now Secretary of something, probably. Interesting story. Jody, is there a problem in terms of, and it's something that I'm sure the press will worry about, personal sensitivities between first families?
You mean, I think sometimes that is the case, sometimes not. I will say that in one of the transitions in which I was involved, there was no problem whatsoever. In another, there was a bit of one, and I'll leave it at that.
All right. I'll talk to you during the commercial sometime. Thanks very much, Jody. Appreciate it. Sheila Tate, thank you for being with us. 15 minutes after the hour. I think I know what he meant. President-elect Bill Clinton, how will he affect your wallet? That one, Good Morning America, continues. Andy Garcia is out stalking a serial killer and joins us in our next half hour.
18 minutes after voters say it was the economy that propelled Bill Clinton to victory, 7 out of 10 rated the economy as either not good or poor, and the vast majority who said so supported the Arkansas Democrat. So how will President Clinton's efforts to jumpstart the economy affect your wallet? Here with some answers is our money editor, Tyler Matheson, who, of course, is also the assistant editor of Money Magazine. Nice to have you here.
Good.
Well, we saw stock prices go down sharply yesterday, 30 points, as soon as the election results came in. What was Wall Street saying about the president-elect?
I think it would be wrong to put too much importance on a one-day drop of that sort. I think it was probably a little bit of apprehension. What is really going to change? The stock market has also been really paying attention to what's been going on in the bond market, and bond investors have been worried that a Clinton administration would do more spending, therefore raise the deficit and possibly create higher inflation. So the bond market hasn't been doing very well. Stock investors thus have gotten a little bit spooked, but a lot of people feel that there's going to be a Clinton rally over the next 6 months or so that could raise stock prices by maybe 6% or so, maybe up to 10% or so. But before you put a lot of money in stocks, remember this. In the post-election years of the 20th century, stocks have averaged only a 3% gain. So don't expect to make a lot of money in stocks next year. Hasn't been a good year for stocks right after the election.
But you just brought up the whole tax and spend issue. And I mean, constantly throughout the campaign, critics said, there's no way that Clinton's going to be able to do everything he's saying he's going to do if he doesn't raise taxes, not just on $200,000 a year and up couples, but maybe more like 60, 80, we even heard 35,000. Is he going to have to do overall tax increases?
Let's take a look at what he really has said and who might be vulnerable. He said he's going to tax the rich, and he's defined rich as couples earning more than $200,000 a year. He said he's going to give tax relief to the middle class, and further, that he will not raise taxes on the middle class to pay for his programs. He's been a little bit careful in defining what he means as middle class, however. The best indication is that he means middle class would be anyone earning, couples earning $80,000 or less. So that leaves a large chunk of the affluent upper middle class, that is, those couples earning between $80,000 and $200,000 a year, who might, in years 2, 3, and 4 of a Clinton administration, be wanting to look out for possible tax increases. Might not be rate increases, but it might be little squeezing of your deductions, paring back of exemptions and things like that. So I think it's the couples earning $80,000 to $200,000 who might be vulnerable.
Iffy. And the ones underneath that, and you say tax relief, what, did I read somewhere like $200 a year or something
like that? It would not be all that much. What he has said is that he would give a tax credit of $300 per child for families and $200 or so for childless couples. So it's not a whole lot of money, but it is tax relief directed at the middle class.
We also see mortgage rates now all of a sudden going up.
Yes, they have indeed. And so the advice here is, if you're thinking about refinancing or taking out a new mortgage, I don't think it's really wise to wait any longer. Yes, it's possible that interest rates could fall again if the Federal Reserve cuts rates and the economy remains sluggish. But it's also equally, or maybe a little bit more possible, that the bond market will force those rates up a little bit. So if you're thinking about a mortgage, I think its best move is to move now.
They've already inched up a little bit over the last couple of weeks.
About a quarter of a point or so over the past few weeks.
But if you're going to do it now.
I think so.
All right, small businesses or self-employed people, I guess, would come under that same category.
Here's the thing that people who have small businesses, perhaps you're thinking about buying some equipment, a computer for your home business, for example, or business equipment if you have a proprietorship. A good thing to do would be to wait to buy that equipment until 1993. Why? Because President-elect Clinton has said that he favors what's known as an investment tax credit that would enable you probably to get a tax credit equal to 10% of the purchase price of that equipment. So if you're thinking about buying gear, why don't you hold off until that law gets introduced? They'll probably make it retroactive to January 1, 1993. So if you're thinking about buying something, you don't need it immediately, why not wait until 93 when you might get a little tax benefit involved?
So much was talked about medical costs. We are now hearing some of those little squeezings might be what? Reducing the amount that wealthy Medicare recipients get?
That's right. Wealthy Medicare recipients can expect to pay more for their Part B, which is the doctor bills portion of Medicare. They'll probably have to pay higher premiums there. Also, individuals who earn more than $125,000 a year will probably have to pay a full, all of those wages will be subject to the Medicare tax, which is a 1.45% of payroll. So look for those two changes as well. There may also be changes for wealthy Social Security recipients who may see some of their benefits subject to tax.
All right, Tyler, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Good Morning America continues. Stay with us.
Hair samples, just in case something tragic should happen to their loved one.
Like getting burned. Meg Green spent $38,000 on an infomercial to promote her financial fitness video. She sold only $22,000 worth of tapes.
Very quickly, we said, okay, I give up.
If you're lucky, real lucky, you might just meet your dreams in the infomercial business. Or you can lose a lot of money real fast.
They flocked to Las Vegas through a desert of recession, and they may have found an oasis. Or it may just be a mirage.
How long will these infomercials be around? Will they be a mirage?
No, I think they're here to stay. I think we're going to see a lot of the kitchen gadgets and the get-rich-quick schemes and the cosmetics, but we're also going to see the Fortune 500 companies coming in a big way. Mainstream advertisers will quickly discover that this is really, in many ways, a wonderful medium. And I think we're going to see infomercials for a long, long time.
I don't think they'll be selling shower head dental flosser dispensers. Thanks so much. Nice to see you, Bob. 23 minutes before the hour. Harry?
I got one. Warning, being overweight can be hazardous to your kid's health. Dr. Bob Arnott has the story next.
When the O'Connors, a doctor's family, catch a cold, the doctor recommends Dimetapp. Now Dimetapp, the brand recommended by doctors over 200 million times, introduces powerful relief for sinus pain and pressure. New Dimetapp Sinus. Its non-drowsy formula contains the pain reliever ibuprofen and a proven decongestant to relieve sinus pain and pressure. For cold and sinus medicine you can trust. Remember, doctors recommend Dimetapp for their families and yours.
I am a father of 6 and a firefighter and a paramedic, so I require a great deal of energy.
Steve Cook discovers breakfast with grape nuts for a week.
Grape nuts kept me going. Every single morning I felt good.
Grape nuts, the fat-free natural energy source.
I love grape nuts. I like the fact that it stayed crunchy in the milk. I'm sold on the grape nuts, and I'll stick with the grape nuts forever.
Breakfast with post-grape nut cereal helps keep you going strong all morning long.
I think after a week, anyone would be sold on grape nuts.
The new baby was up all night. Now you gotta make the morning right. Folgers always comes through. It's decaffeinated too. The best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup.
Mountain-grown Folgers decaffeinated. It gives you something the other leading brand doesn't. Richer aroma to wake you up.
Now you're off to a great start, 'cause Folgers warmed your heart. What a wonderful way to let the sunshine on your day. The best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup.
If your kids' clothes wear out before the kids grow out of them, Sears will replace them. It's all part of Sears Kid Vantage program that can save you money on any of the 70 national brands Sears sells. And it's one more way you can count on me.
This morning's health segment is sponsored by Red Lobster, for the seafood lover in you.
"21 minutes before the hour, a major new study going all the way back to 1922 has some sobering news for overweight teenagers and their parents. They're apt to pay a price later in life, and that goes beyond the emotional scars we all know about. And Dr. Bob Arnott is here with the details. Good morning, Bob.
Good morning, Harry.
So what are the risks later on in life for a teenager who's fat?
Well, it's long been said that coronary artery disease, or heart disease, is a disease of childhood and adolescence that first shows up in middle age, and that's the predominant finding of this study. Now, as you point out, these researchers found a study that began in 1922, and they followed up to see what happened to all of these people who were overweight. Here are the results. For men who were 20 or more pounds overweight as teenagers, they doubled their risk of death from all causes. They doubled their risk of death from coronary artery disease, and most of the deaths were in this group. They also increased their risk of colon cancer. Now, for the women, they increased their risk of suffering from chest pain. They increased their risk of arthritis and their risk of having difficulty with daily activities such as walking up and down the street. The most interesting thing is this. It didn't matter if you reformed as an adult. If you had overweight as a problem as a teenager, those risks carried on right through life, and they began to show up at the age of 45, which is why we say coronary artery disease is a disease of childhood that shows up in middle age.
Is it just a problem of being overweight, or is it really more of a problem, say, the high fat content in the diet, or because if a kid is this big, maybe he's going to not get out and exercise so much? What do we know about those factors?
Two key theories. Dr. William Dietz, who is the author of this study, says that these kids all learn bad behaviors. So they learn to make poor food choices. They learn a sedentary lifestyle, and those bad behaviors stay with them through the rest of life. The other interesting theory is that when you put weight on as an adolescent, you put it on here around your midsection, not lower, but here. And when you put weight around your midsection, it increases your risk of heart disease, predominantly by increasing your cholesterol and your blood pressure.
So if you're a parent at home listening to this right now, should you put your kids on a diet immediately if you suspect they're